Spring training is just under 2 weeks away, and we continue our 2024 Braves preview series here on BPTV. We've looked at the pitchers, and now it's time to dive into what I believe will once again be the most powerful offense in baseball. And we're going to start that part out with the infield. Before we get started here on today's edition of the show, go ahead and leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel. We are closing in on 5,000 subscribers and could use your help keeping this thing growing. Grant McCauley alongside Chris Willis as always. And Chris, we spent plenty of time on this pitching staff, but I'm looking forward to really previewing what should be one of the best offenses that we've seen in Braves history and maybe the best offense in baseball here again in 2024.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and where do you go for an encore after the numbers they put up last season?
Yeah.
But all these guys are in their primes. All these guys are signed long term. So, I expect more of the same in 2024.
You read my mind because we're going to be talking about encores, and we might as well go ahead and start going around the horn, but beginning at first base because we're going to cover behind the plate and get all of the guys who are on the dirt, as they say, or at least in that infield group, including these catchers. But who better to start with than a man who made home run history, franchise history in 2023? That was Matt Olson, as he set a Braves franchise record with 54 home runs last year. He also led Major League Baseball with an RBI total of 139. Olson was on hand at Braves Fan Fest, and he discussed his historic season.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, some good mementos to have. A lot of things, stars have to align a little bit to, come away with the season like that. And, like I talked about last year, just some of the other names that was being mentioned with, it was cool for me as, a baseball fan and a Braves fan growing up.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some of those names, but Chris, I would hope at this point that a lot of folks out there might give up comparing Matt Olson to his predecessor, though I will stipulate that guy's also still pretty good.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think Matt Olson put up just a huge monster season. I think a lot of people were expecting something similar to that in 2022, coming from Oakland, hitting in the Coliseum to coming to Truist Park, of course. But, at the same time, he put together a solid season. But, it's almost an impossible situation when you're replacing, a hometown legend like Freddie Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
You're coming home. It's a homecoming in itself. And when you add both of those things together, man, it's tough. But he looked really relaxed last year. Not only the homers, but the RBIs and everything. He just a monster season all the way around. And I think he's really, coming in. We've seen it. He put together some big seasons in Oakland, but I think the sky's the limit for him here in Atlanta now.
Yeah, and I think he was able to get comfortable, to your point. And let me add a little bit more context to just how good Olson was in year 2 of that 8-year contract he signed with Atlanta. Because a lot of years, this is the guy who wins the MVP award walking away, but he had a teammate that just happened to be making even more history of his own. That aside, Olson joined Hank Aaron, Gary Sheffield, and Hugh Duffy as the only players in Braves history to turn in a season with 130 or more runs batted in and 120 or more runs scored. And he was just 6 RBI away from matching Duffy's single-season record of 145. So this was a season for the ages. And I know we're going to be talking about encores a lot on this show, but for a group and for individuals, but it's going to be just fascinating to see what Olson does to follow up such an incredible year. But I think you hit on something, Chris. He's now able to get comfortable. He doesn't have to answer all those questions anymore. This is home for him. And you can tell just by listening to Matt Olson talk, he really doesn't he really doesn't get his emotions, running the show. He's a guy that's able to be kind of laid back, and even through the highs and the lows, able to pretty much maintain his very steady pace. And I think that's something that's kind of a calming influence in that Braves lineup.
Yeah, I think so too. And he really took off, it seemed like, after he moved down to the cleanup spot in that order. I mean, just all the run scoring opportunities that he's going to have, hitting behind Ronald Acuna, Ozzie Albies, and Austin Riley if they choose to line it up that way. So I agree. I mean, he doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, very soft spoken. He talked a little bit about, some adjustments he made between 2022 and 2023. And man, they, to me, they really, really just took off with that season that he had.
Yeah, they did. And across the diamond, he's got some serious firepower backing him up, however you want to look at it, however they line him up. But the Braves, they've got another MVP candidate on the infield itself because Austin Riley shook off that slow start and posted yet another 30-homer season. 37 long balls from him, 1 away from matching his career high set in 2022. Go ahead and toss in 97 runs batted in, 117 runs scored for Riley to go along with an 861 OPS. And you've got all the makings of another strong campaign. Interesting note on those home runs. Riley's only the third Braves third baseman to have 3 straight 30-homer seasons. You might know these other names, Eddie Matthews and Chipper Jones. That's pretty good company. And it may take the rest of this 10-year contract that Riley signed, that record deal, to see where he ends up among the all-time greats for the Braves. But Riley, he just led all third basemen in home runs for the second straight year. Even MLB Network had him ranked #1 on their list of top third basemen in the game. And Chris, we know that's a rather tough crowd.
Oh, no doubt about it. I think there's a segment of fans out there that kind of felt like Riley had a disappointing season, which to me it was just steady all the way through. I mean, you just talked about the home runs, the runs scored, the RBIs, and then the longevity that he's shown that now for 3 straight seasons. I think he had his best defensive season at third base last year. I think that's one reason you see him ranked so high in MLB Network's rankings. I mean, what can you say? This guy's going to be a cornerstone of this franchise. He just goes out there and does his job. And, I thought he had a great season last year. He just got overshadowed by, two teammates that had historic seasons.
Yeah, and the growth of Austin Riley year over year. I mean, he's learned how to work through his down periods, the slumps, whatever you want to call it, because early in the year, launch angle clearly wasn't right. He was grounded into a lot of double plays, but you would think with a younger player, maybe the younger version of Austin Riley, that might compound. He might start pressing, but instead, he just kept working the problem, and you can tell that's the growth and maturity of a player like Austin, who at the end, he had his numbers exactly where you would expect him to be. Now, he may be putting up those big numbers year after year, but he's also tasted success and failure in the postseason. Here's what Austin Riley had to say at FanFest about Atlanta's recent shortcomings in October and where they go from there to try to get back to the promised land and get back to the top of the mountain, as it were.
My biggest thing was, I was like, you could either look at it two different ways. You can sit there and feel sorry for yourself, or you can, try to learn from what happened and try to get better from that. And I think that's the way, me personally, is the way I've looked at it this all season, and just trying to improve some stuff, from the hitting side, defensive side. So I think, that's a lot of the mindset of guys, having is just, continue to one, try to win a division, and then get to that point and know what we need to do to take care of business.
Again, we can talk numbers and records and milestones for this group and for the individuals here, but bottom line, Chris, is this: the goal is World Series or bust for the Atlanta Braves, and every man in that clubhouse knows it.
Yeah, no, that's it. And a lot of them, Spencer Strider and others, talked about the change in mindset that they need to do. That maybe a little more urgency. I think they thought they did everything necessary during the break, before the division series last year. But still, for whatever reason, wasn't able to get the job done. Obviously, the Phillies had something to do with that. But that was one thing around Braves Fest that we saw was everybody talking a little bit about how not only getting to the postseason, not only, going through the regular season, but, finding a way to have some success once they get there.
Yeah, finding and maintaining that edge is what teams need that time of year. I mean, a lot can happen in baseball that's unpredictable, and October, I think, is a microcosm of all of that. But there's an expectation here for this Braves group. Now, moving on, Austin Riley, MLB Network's top third baseman heading into 2024. But somehow Ozzie Albies didn't even crack the top 10 over at second base. We'll be figuring that out for a long time. We're going to talk about it right now, though, because he led all second basemen in home runs in 2023 with 33 of those. He's the only second baseman in baseball to hit 30 home runs in either of the past 2 seasons. And by the way, he also topped his position in runs batted in with 109 last year. He's the only National League second baseman in the past 10 years to top the century mark in RBI, and the only National League second baseman to hit more than 30 home runs since, you guessed it, Dan Uggla did so for the Braves back in 2011. I say all that to say not many players at his position do what Albies does on an annual basis from the power and run production standpoint. You throw in 76 stolen bases across 732 career games, and the fact he's already accumulated nearly a 20 F-WAR in his young career, averaging a 4 WAR per 162 games. Chris, I know he's battled injuries, but I'm still trying to figure out what exactly does Ozzie Albies need to do to make that top 10 list, because I'm all out of ideas.
No, I have no idea. I mean, to me, I just wondered if they just simply forgot about him, because he's got the numbers to be on that list. I would take him over large number of the players that was in that top 10. And I mean, last year was a great bounce back season for him after the broken foot and the finger injury. And, in 2022. I mean, as you said, he's always murdered lefties, hitting right-handed. But last year he was above league average as a lefty bat last year, which is something was always one of the criticisms for him. 111 weighted run created plus against right-handers last year. A lot of those homers came, hitting lefty too. I think if there's a wart in his game, it's something we got to watch this year. -6 fielding run value per Baseball Savant. The defensive metrics did not like him last year. I'm wondering if there was some noise in there because of the, going away from the shift and whatnot, but that is something to watch. But I mean, again, when you're talking hitting and second base, Ozzie Albies has got to be near the top of the list, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to have Ozzie Albies out of the top 3, I can see the argument for that when you talk about all-around game, but how he's not in the top 5, let alone top 10, is just a baffling mystery that we're not going to solve here on this edition of BPTV. But like you said, Albies has shown better splits by far and fewer bats, though, batting right-handed. Last year, though, 28 home runs from the left side of the plate. That's even after I felt like what was a slow start, and that lineup switch that you mentioned earlier that also benefited Matt Olson. Albies' defense and arm were definitely questioned in 2023, especially after having his shoulder cleaned up last winter. But this is a guy that checks an awful lot of boxes and may have the most favorable contract in baseball. So when you add it all up, Chris, I mean, the Braves are in a very good place at first base, at third base, and at second base when you start to go around this infield.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I mean, and Ozzie did talk about that this was a normal offseason for him. He didn't have to worry about the shoulder. So, I am interested to see, what his defensive numbers look like this time around, because I do still think there's a lot of noise, in the defensive metrics and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, Ozzie Albies is easily a top 10 second base. You can't tell me there's 10 second basemen out there that are better than he is.
No, we'll stick a pin in that debate and move over to shortstop as well. The Braves have a pretty good value going on there with Albies and Arcia. Let's add this up. They're owed just $9 million in total in each of the next 3 seasons. That's if Arcia's team options are picked up, and then Ozzie has one beyond that. But just $9 million per year for this double play combo, that indeed is a pretty nice value for the Braves. We knew things were going to be different with Dansby Swanson leaving and signing with the Cubs. Arcia, though, he stepped in, I felt like, and handled the duties admirably, especially in that first half. He was voted the National League starter at shortstop for the All-Star game. I did not account for that possibility when he won the job somewhat surprisingly back in spring training. But his great first half didn't exactly carry over in the second half, at least not from the consistency standpoint. 294 with a 769 OPS in 68 games before the break. Batted just 235 after, but did have 10 home runs in those final 3 months. Defense solid enough. He lacked Swanson's range, but he makes up for it a lot of times with a superior arm. Adding that all up, and the Braves, I feel like, have a capable shortstop who's still just 29 years old at a great price yet again in 2024. The question, though, Chris, I think, is can Arcia keep it up and at least reach the bar that he did in 2023 when he really got his career back on track?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like he's going to get the opportunity to, at least. I mean, when you factor in that he's making about $2 million a season, it's just ridiculous value. The Braves can afford, if he's going to be around a league average bat, Braves can afford to hit him at the bottom of the order. I think all they're mainly worried about is the defense. And like you said, he's probably not as good defensively as Dansby Swanson overall, but he's good enough. And, he had a good defensive season last year. And, I think 17 home runs, that's just a bonus when you look at it. And one thing that jumped out to me when I was looking at Arcia's season last year, we always talk about Ozzie crushing lefties. Orlando Arcia had a 168 weighted runs created plus against left-handed pitchers last year. And I didn't sort the whole team, but I imagine that's one of the higher totals on the roster. So, I'm anxious to see. I wasn't crazy about the decision to go with Arcia out of the spring last year. I kind of wanted to see Vaughn Grissom early on, but he proved me wrong. He went out there and he was steady all the way through, and I'm kind of anxious to see what he does this season.
Yeah, outside of a couple of injury hiccups for him, really not much was able to derail Arcia over the course of the season. He took that job and he just ran away and hid with it. Now the Braves use Vaughn Grissom to bring in a player that they feel like might give him a little bit more of that edge we talked about earlier in Chris Sale. There was a lot of commentary about that at Braves Fan Fest as well. When you look at the backup infield options, those seem to be pretty much set, but there could be some changes here. David Fletcher acquired in a trade, the veteran infielder, versatile player with the Angels. He's off the 40-man roster for now, but does have that invite to spring training. That's likely to change, I would imagine, given the money the Braves owe Fletcher. Luis Guillorme was also picked up on a one-year deal, formerly of the Mets, a free agent signing that gives Atlanta some versatility as well. Larry Garcia, Luke Williams, Andrew Velasquez among those in camp as non-roster options. And it wouldn't surprise me, Chris, to see another minor league signing or two that could impact the bench in a somewhat meaningful way, especially by the end of spring training as clubs start to make those cuts. We might just see somebody come off the board to help round out Atlanta's 26-man roster.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen them remake the bench late in spring training many times under Alex Anthopoulos, and the thing to keep an eye on, they still only have 37 players on the 40-man. So, as teams do start to pare down their rosters, they can be really active on the waiver wire, and they don't have to make any decisions early in the spring. They can wait. They can push them all right to the end and just see what their available options are.
So that's what's happening from first to third around the Braves infield, and a quick peek at what might be happening coming off the bench. But behind the plate, the Braves got incredible production from the duo of Sean Murphy and Travis d'Arnaud last season. Braves catchers combined for 32 home runs and 102 runs batted in with a 783 OPS. So while the Braves boasted 5 hitters with 30-plus home runs last year, their catchers actually gave them a 6-position group to reach that 30-homer plateau. And as we know, the Braves hit more home runs than all but one team in baseball history, and that's a club they tied with in the 2019 Twins. But it's not just about offense with these two, Chris. I think that what they do behind the plate and the everyday work they do with this pitching staff is of equal or more importance. And I know that might sound like a cliche, but that's how the Braves look at it as well.
No doubt. And I mean, I think it's the same thing with Arcia. Anything they get with the bat from the catcher's position is just a bonus. And they've said as much. Sean Murphy, Travis d'Arnaud, great with that pitching staff. Controlling the running game's even more important now. I think it's going to be interesting to see how teams combat the running game a little more this offseason with the second year of the new rules. But, yeah, I think the Braves are in just great shape behind the plate with Murphy and d'Arnaud.
Well, Sean Murphy certainly has the arm to help combat that running game, but we'll see what he's able to do in year 2 with Atlanta. All-Star honors his first year after coming over in that trade with the Oakland Athletics and signing an extension. Career highs offensively, despite that second-half slide for him. Travis d'Arnaud, though, he knows a little bit about that all-star life himself, and he had to fight through some concussion issues last year, and d'Arnaud was at Braves Fan Fest and discussed how he's feeling as the Braves head into spring training.
I don't know how I'm still playing. If you'd have asked me 6 years ago if I thought I'd be where I am now, I would have laughed at you and said there's no chance. Thanks for the motivation, but I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, I feel good, and I am thankful to still be able to play, especially with this team. We have a really good chance of winning it all, and there's no other place I'd rather be.
Travis d'Arnaud is in a place and with a club that I think would rather him be no other place as well, if all of that makes sense. I might have just taken the long way around there, but he's universally respected in that clubhouse. And to sum it up, between Murphy and d'Arnaud, who are both very well respected, the Braves have a catching situation that's the envy of all of baseball, because it's great to have one guy you can depend on behind the plate. Atlanta has a duo that they believe in on any given day, no matter who's in the starting lineup.
Yeah, no doubt. And as you said, Travis has emerged as one of those big voices in that clubhouse. After the departure of Freddie Freeman, Dansby Swanson, he's taken that mantle. It doesn't really matter if he doesn't play as much as he used to. They form a great duo. Sean Murphy, I think the offensive ceilings, I think we're going to start as the longer he's in Atlanta, I think we're going to see more and more offense from him. He talked a little bit too about adjusting to the summer heat. And I mean, I agree with you. I felt like he had a little bit of a slump in the second half, but I was looking at the numbers today. Still 112 weighted runs created plus in the second half. Yeah. Ground ball rate was what really jumped up to from 38% to almost 45%. But again, when you're carrying a load in that heat for the first time behind the plate, I think there's some, maybe that's part of the reason why down the stretch. And if Travis can stay healthy all season, we're probably going to see a little bit more of, we'll probably see a little more of Murphy, but, Travis is very capable of going in there and getting starts as well.
Well, among the many reasons why the Braves are what they are, which was the best offense in baseball in 2023, it's that they had a group of franchise players, 2 of them on the corners in the infield, a strong group up the middle as well, and behind the plate. I think it's fair to expect that this group overall, Chris, is going to get back to their slugging ways in 2024, and we might see a few more of those 30-plus home run seasons. And I would imagine that when we saw what the Braves were able to accomplish in 2023, and then you throw in the outfield group that we're going to talk about next week, I think we're talking about a lot of guys who are part of the best lineup in baseball yet again, but they got to make sure that they're able to push that thing over the finish line and keep hitting in October this time around.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it's a good group. Like you said, it's locked up with the exception of shortstop, and I think Orlando's under contract for a couple more, at least a couple more years. So, I mean, I think it's one of the best situations in baseball. And as you've seen them, you've seen the numbers they put up, and like I said, it was a backbone. I think this infield group was the backbone of this team last year.
Yeah, it wasn't long ago that the Braves had at least a couple of questions at a couple of different spots all around the diamond. And now you look around and there really aren't that many questions. And even if you're not sold completely on who might be at a spot, you start looking around at the other 29 teams and you feel pretty good about the position that the Braves are in. That's going to do it for this episode of BPTV. But join us next time when we preview the outfielders led by superstar Ronald Acuna Jr., unanimous MVP of the National League, alongside the 2022 Rookie of the Year, Michael Harris, and newcomer Jared Kelnick. We'll dive into all of that. Should be an awful lot of fun. As always, we thank you for riding along with us. Make sure you like this video, leave us your comments, and subscribe to the Battery Power channel here on YouTube. We are closing in on 5,000 subscribers, and we'd appreciate you being one of those. If you like what you've seen and what you've heard, be sure to share the show with a friend as well. We will catch you next time here on BPTV, and until then, so long, Braves Country.